This video will focus on how Amon-Ra St. Brown returned on Thursday Night Football against the Cowboys. Probably not even close to 100%. My guess is 88, 90, somewhere in that range. He decided to play, willed himself to play, refused to sit on the sideline, whatever the word or descriptors are. He was a huge part of what the Lions offense was able to accomplish. Jameson Williams, of course, had another spectacular game. That's 2 in a row. To get St. Brown back at the same time that Jameson Williams is performing at this level, I think that combination is the spark that was needed. Pre-game, I thought his entrance was badass, St. Brown's entrance. Clearly the crowd was pumped up to see him get back out there after the injury against the Packers. And then he had the production to go along with it. 6 catches on 9 targets for 92 yards. The capper, of course, was his 37-yard catch with a little bit less than 3 minutes left. It's a 2nd and 9. Dallas had closed to 37-30. You had a really big return, I think, by Tom Kennedy once again. St. Brown, Goff, Dan Campbell as well. They decided to go for it. What I mean is 2nd and 9, instead of running the football or a short pass concept to maybe generate or create, set up a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, they go under center play action. I think that needs to be a huge focus of the offense moving forward, and it was in this game. Brilliant strategy here, in my opinion, to go for the big play. With the coverage that the Cowboys were showing, a one-high safety look, it's kind of crazy in this season that has involved a lot of injuries and difficulties, right? You now have St. Brown and Williams ready to contribute possibly the most as a duo in 2025. Williams is a huge part of the offense. Last week against the Packers when St. Brown went out, and then this week against the Cowboys, I think 7 catches, 144 for him. Let's get to the film. I'll show you some of St. Brown's plays in the air as a receiver and at least 1 or 2 good reps of him blocking and making himself available to help teammates generate more yards down the field. This is the first possession that was obviously very promising. Detroit's able to get the ball downfield, I think, inside the 15-yard line. It ironically ends with a sack of James Houston IV, beating Penei Sewell to prevent Detroit from getting in the end zone and make them hold them to a field goal. So this is St. Brown's first target, little stop route. A dynamic that I want to mention and talk about multiple times in this video, actually 2 of them, is St. Brown and Williams on the same side of the field. So lining up on the same side, number 1 or number 2, possibly being used as part of the same route concept. This is a quick game concept. Goff reading this safety to the boundary side. Let's say that this safety was to drop down a little bit more dramatically and be somewhere in this area. Well, then you've got the in cut to Jameson Williams a little bit later. High-low concept, whatever you want to call it. Quick read for Goff, getting the football out. I think St. Brown only generates 7 yards here. The idea is to get the ball out quick, a series of good, solid, consistent decisions. But another dynamic that I want to at least bring it to your attention is Gibbs releasing opposite of these 2. And so oftentimes when they're lined up on the same side, whether it's to the field or the boundary like you see here, Gibbs is releasing to the field, and those 2 guys are obviously originating from the other side of the field. So there seems to be this horizontal stretch of the defense whereby second-level defenders are possibly reacting to Gibbs' route and clearing or opening up the middle of the field. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense, but there'll be at least one concept here coming up that kind of illustrates it a little bit better. Same play from the end zone angle. Here is St. Brown. He's going to just check up with Williams running a deeper concept that would be, over top of this safety if that safety was to drop down, spin down a little bit more onto St. Brown's short route. Pass protection, man, there was some tough moments early. I thought that the offensive line, whether you had Cologne in there or Frazier at left guard, I thought those guys were pretty solid throughout, especially on the under center play action stuff. Now, this happens to be a shotgun iteration of the offense, but in my opinion, the under center shotgun plays gives the offensive line a better chance to compete. Maybe in this game, St. Brown didn't have a 5th gear, but one thing he showed was being able to catch the ball and turn as he's catching the ball to get some more yards after the catch. Still on the first possession here. Now St. Brown is up to the top. Jameson Williams down at the bottom. Still an interesting dynamic from the standpoint of Jahmyr Gibbs' release post-snap. So he's lined up on Goff's right down into the boundary. And I think you've got a banjo read here by these 2 inside linebackers on Jahmyr Gibbs. So I'll diagram that out a little bit. So what I basically mean is both of these guys are reading Jahmyr Gibbs. If Gibbs was to release into the boundary, which is not what he does, theoretically, I think this inside linebacker would match him, and the Mike linebacker set to the field would either settle into the low hole area, the middle of the field, approximately 6 to 10 yards deep, or he could possibly be an add-on rusher. The opposite is what actually occurs. This inside linebacker goes to take Gibbs because Gibbs releases to the field. It's a design screen. Really cool route implementation, if you ask me. There's a lot going on here. So it's a screen, it's a design screen because you got offensive linemen working downfield. But these guys are running routes, one of which is St. Brown. It's basically a wheel that St. Brown is running at the top side, and I think Detroit knows that they're going to get man, so they're running routes to get their defenders' backs turned. So the inside linebacker that was responsible for Gibbs has expanded, and guess what? Taylor Decker is responsible for him. So really nice design, in my opinion, from that standpoint. In addition, on the back side of this, the other inside linebacker, who's not taking Gibbs, but nonetheless is moving to the side, the middle of the field, he actually gets screened off or picked, if you will, by the route from Isaac Tesla. What that all means is once Gibbs catches the football, he's got, I should say, no one to beat, really, because Decker is responsible for the inside linebacker, and Gibbs is attacking downfield. St. Brown trying to block here downfield doesn't really necessarily contribute because Gibbs kind of cuts this back once and then tries to cut it back twice. It ends up being a 19-yard gain that I believe went down officially as a run play because the pass was thrown backwards. We've moved on to the second possession here. Detroit obviously had to settle for a field goal, which Dallas matched. St. Brown is matched up with Deron Bland here in the slot. You kind of know it's man in some of these cases because of the pre-snap configuration of some of the DBs, their alignment, basically matching the routes to make it look like man. In addition, the free safety in the middle of the field. Dallas does a little bit less of spinning to too high post-snap than maybe I've seen from most other teams in the NFL. In any case, St. Brown kind of running this out route. Williams on a clear-out concept. I want to see less clear-out routes for Jameson Williams for real, especially with the contributions that he's put forth the last 2 weeks against the Packers and now here against the Cowboys. Goff is actually hit as he throws. I feel like this and one other on the third possession is one of the last times that we saw him really pressured quickly to where you had to get rid of the football quick, and it wasn't Goff throwing the football quick by choice. 3rd and 8, St. Brown definitely, falling to the ground right here with this foot in the ground. I think it's his left foot in the ground, kind of becomes off balance. Maybe Bland is making contact there. I'm not sure. I think Detroit's kind of fortunate that one didn't end up being an interception. In any case, it ended up working out in Detroit's favor. The ensuing punt by Jack Fox was downed, I think, at the 9. There was a penalty on Dallas as well. And 2 plays later, you had the sack safety that should have been from Jack Campbell, forced the punt, and then the Lions are able to get a touchdown, in fact, on their third possession. This is the aforementioned third possession. St. Brown spot shadowed in yellow. It's a 2nd and 13. So many guys put forth big plays on Thursday night. David Montgomery, the 35-yard touchdown. St. Brown, this reception for 26. One in the fourth quarter for 37. Jameson Williams had the huge 3rd and 6 conversion in the middle of the fourth quarter. So I like this concept. And once again, you see the same dynamic. Williams and St. Brown set to the field next to one another, and Gibbs releasing opposite. It's a really nice shake slant by St. Brown. So he's initially hedging to the top side of our screen, matched up in man in the slot, and then all the space in the middle of the field, once again, is going to kind of be opened up because of the release from Gibbs. It pulls this inside linebacker away from the middle of the field. Number one, the route design, I feel like, sets up some of the yards after the catch. I'm talking about the tight ends route down here. And then Tesla kind of like a dig, if you will, a little bit late. And what it means is, or the way that it works out, is once St. Brown catches the football on a clean win, then he's going to be able to run onto this open space between those two receivers. Maybe it's kind of random. It doesn't seem like it to me. The timing of these routes And the timing of when the ball arrives is important, in my opinion. It allows St. Brown to basically run onto that open space, like I said, and get 26 yards, a lot of it after the catch. Very simple concept, efficient, if you ask me. The win by St. Brown on the shake slant is timed up with all three of these routes, in my opinion, from the other side of the field. Nice little pocket for Goff to get rid of the football quickly. And as Gibbs releases to the outside, he's going to draw this inside linebacker here, number one. Number two, the other inside linebacker goes on a blitz, and the entire middle of the field is wide open because of route design and the reaction that the Cowboys defense offered. The tight end actually, gets another defender out of there. St. Brown is on the run. Maybe he didn't have a fifth gear in this game, but he had a fourth or maybe a four and a half gear. He reminds me, or I should say JSN reminds me of him, in that they both catch the football and they're already on the run. They're already on the move. So moving forward, maybe he's not 100% healthy right now. Maybe he won't be soon, but he's still able to do a lot of those things, catch the football and run, or be moving as the football arrives so that he can get 3 or 4 or 5 yards after the catch when he should really only get 1 or 2. Move forward late second quarter here. It's a 1st and 10. I think I actually may have the down and distance marked wrong there. But in any case, Detroit took possession with less than 50 seconds left. I think it was like a 24-yard return or maybe 26 yards by Kennedy. Dallas is really late getting lined up here. You got another clear-out route by Williams with St. Brown lined up to the field together once again. Goff and St. Brown can take advantage of this type of stuff, these out routes from the slot, even when you are lined up, even when you are prepared as a defense. Here, Dallas is kind of moving in late. They end up looking like a quarters type structure, and they're matching first to the flats to both sides. Just not in the right position, if you ask me, to be able to stop this route. St. Brown, I think, gets 8 or 9 yards. This one is critical to the field goal at the late in the second quarter that puts them up 20-19. At the time of the throw from Goff, it's 17-9, and St. Brown's going to draw a defensive pass interference on Shervon Revel. I do think that this route and this throw from Goff, it deserves some credit. Precision is needed, some guile or guts, if you will, and then confidence as well. In addition, you've got this route from Jameson Williams on the backside that possibly could become open later in the progression. In my opinion, it's very similar to some of the stuff that we talked about earlier on. The only difference is Jahmyr Gibbs is not releasing to the outside. So we don't have this type of release by Gibbs and then that route from Williams in the middle of the field. Gibbs is kind of going or inserting, through the B gap. And you've got, I think, an attempted spin move down here by James Houston IV that Decker swallows up, and then the guard punches him as well. St. Brown working up the right sideline, complete one-on-one. They've hit this route before, they being Goff and St. Brown. It's an obvious pass interference to me. Maybe the all-22 angle is too zoomed out, and maybe the end zone angle that I'll show in a minute is too blurry. The pass interference call allowed, which like I said, I believe was the appropriate call. It allowed Detroit to get the ball down, I think, to Dallas' 29 and tack on that field goal at the end of the half. So here they are right here. Again, it's kind of blurry between Revel and St. Brown, but the hand is extended from Revel. I think he's actually, sometimes the interference occurs before the ball arrives. Sometimes it occurs as the ball is arriving or even, thereafter during the attempted catch. I think you've got at least 2 of those 3 elements here. It was pretty obvious that Goff, was attacking the rookie corner. I don't know what the targets and catches and yards allowed looked like, but it seemed, pretty fruitful or pretty effective for Detroit. So they took a 20-9 lead into the half, stretched it to 27-9. Dallas fought back multiple times in the third quarter. Here's one of them. Even after this 3rd and 5 has failed, they get a blocked field goal, meaning the Cowboys are able to block one of Detroit's field goals and then tack on a 63-yarder of their own to get to within 27-19. Here's a 3rd and 5 for St. Brown that kind of precedes all of that. And again, you've got St. Brown and Williams lined up next to each other. I think that's Tom Kennedy illustrated by this kind of deeper out route here. In addition, one more time, Gibbs releasing opposite. They're trying to clear up the middle of the field. Now, what happens is St. Brown's route kind of gets pushed to the outside or hedged a little bit further than maybe he wants it to be. So him and Williams basically end up in the same tunnel. They end up in the same seam, if you will. I do wonder if, since St. Brown was out last week, if this is speculation on my part, if Williams was actually playing the St. Brown role. I speculated on that after the Packers lost last week in a film study video on Jameson Williams. I've just never seen this before for these guys. I almost wonder if St. Brown, as the ball gets there, thinks that it's intended for Williams because he almost seems surprised by the football. Like I said, the ensuing field goal was blocked. Then Dallas added on a 63-yarder of their own. I think they hit 57 from 55 and then from 63 on the day. This is the same play from the end zone angle. St. Brown spot shadowed on the left. Maybe they've talked about it in a press conference. I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. I just watch the film and try to tell you what I see. I want it to be organic, for better or for worse. That inside linebacker kind of forces St. Brown to expand a little bit. He doesn't really make enough contact for me. If I'm coaching inside linebackers, I want a little bit more contact there. Damn the rules. And you can see both of those guys, right in the same funnel. It really surprises St. Brown. Well, it surprises me that he dropped it, but it surprises St. Brown that the ball gets on top of him so quick. And after the blocked field goal and then allowing the long one to Dallas, it ends up being 27-19. Later into the fourth quarter, and I love this play concept, not just because of the impact that St. Brown has as a blocker, because of the way that Detroit is utilizing their personnel. It's 11 personnel, but it's jumbo 11. So Skipper's on the field like he was for much of the game. And the run concept is going to go to our right initially, but the Detroit Lions left. So Gibbs is flowing to his left, our right. St. Brown's going to work all the way across the heels of the offensive line. And then he's going to end up picking, I think it's Deron Bland from the other side. Multiple guys doing a great job here. First, the read by Gibbs, and then adjusting it to bring it back against the grain of the offensive line's flow. I don't know whether Skipper is holding or grabbing here, or if Ezeraku is just veering upfield, like he's trying to go get a sack. But if that's the case, tremendous lack of awareness, but he probably can't see the football right here. He doesn't know whether it's handed off or not. So he could obviously be moving up to attack Goff in the event that it's a play action. Finally, Sewell doing a great job here, going to get 59. Gibbs powers his way into the end zone. We'll let it flow through a little bit for St. Brown, for effect for St. Brown. I love the path that he takes. And how on a night when he's not playing at 100%, he's still willing to get involved. He's still, in fact, willing to be unselfish and block for his teammates. Also have to talk about Frazier, the left guard here. We'll let this flow through one time. It's the same play from the all-22 angle. This one puts him up 37-7. Gibbs is going to wind it back. It's a great concept from Jumbo 11, so they're running away from Skipper at first. And then you've got the wind back nature of Gibbs's cut. I think you've got a really nice pickup by Frazier here. We're talking about right here as the left guard. He'll bump the defensive tackle. I think that's Williams, but I may be wrong. And then he's got the awareness. There's a stunt happening here by the inside linebacker and the defensive end. 54 basically takes over the inside linebacker's gap. What you would normally have is a combo and then work up to the second level. Well, what Dallas is doing is they're stunting this D end into the B gap and then bringing this inside linebacker off the edge. It's a gap exchange, essentially, a called gap exchange. And Frazier picks it up. Really cool, if you ask me, that you've got a guy who hadn't played a single snap in the regular season. They can just throw in there. St. Brown was involved in everything, and I think that's the larger point here for me. 6 catches, 92 yards from a statistical standpoint. Sure, he had an impact. An impact on the culture, or I should say an impact on the attitude, the focus in the pregame, but with the introduction, which was spectacular. But his willingness to block, in my opinion, just tells you that the overall culture is solid, and it's overarching, it's overriding, regardless of whether this team finishes 10-7, 11-6, or what have you. Finally, to illustrate, the actual on-field impact that he had, this is, of course, the 37-yard gain. I think there's about 2:58 left in the game when this ball is snapped. Dallas elected to kick a field goal on a 4th and 3 and closed to 37-30. This is a big moment, in my opinion, where Campbell, Goff, St. Brown, they go for the kill on a 2nd and 9. So it's a jumbo 12 personnel group. Skipper is up here, and I think that's Ferkser, the other tight end, down at the bottom side. Williams' route is going to go right at the free safety. I think he's coached here to run directly at the free safety. St. Brown running a deeper dig over the middle once Williams' route has gone vertical. The rookie Siobhan Revel, wasn't targeted here, but I think he carries Williams' route in too far. And what that does is it leaves too much space, or more space, I should say, open for St. Brown to run onto after the catch. Here's Williams running right at the free safety. He essentially kind of occupies two guys. Revel, the corner, went with him, and the free safety. St. Brown runs onto the open space. Like I said, 37-yard gain. Jameson Williams kind of got his hand up in the air. He thought it was, going to the house. It's a cool concept, and like I said, I credit Dan Campbell and Goff for the strategy here, for the approach. Rather than get into a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 situation where maybe you play for 4 downs, they just went for the whole thing. To me, the under center play action is what makes all of this work. It's a quick game concept by Goff. It also gives the offensive line a, predetermined amount of time that they have to protect for. In terms of the pass rush, Goff gets the ball on top of St. Brown in time, in an accurate location. Again, no 5th gear for him on this night, but it was enough to get 37 yards, set everything up for Jahmyr Gibbs' final touchdown to make it 44-30. Couple of observations, one of which that St. Brown doesn't necessarily have anything to do with. The offensive line play, evening out, almost improving as the game progressed. A little bit surprising, perhaps. Dallas has got a quality defensive line. I don't know that their defensive line is on the same level as the Green Bay Packers or the Houston Texans, teams like that. I think this was a virtuoso performance by the offense. From a game plan standpoint, from how the play calling flowed generally throughout the game, definitely some differences in the run concepts between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think that kind of is reflected in the stats and how teams have been able to defend Jahmyr Gibbs on those direct flow, attack now, run plays, inside zone, outside zone, what have you. But so many guys were making an impact. Montgomery had the 35-yard run. I think he finished with 6 carries for 62 yards. Gibbs, 3 touchdowns. Williams, 7 catches for the 2nd week in a row, in fact. And then St. Brown. I think it's borderline heroic what he did. Given the situation, initially I think projected to be out for 2 weeks. Because of all the injuries that this team has had to deal with, and it's more now, obviously, with the horrible news about Brian Branch. For St. Brown to show up and say, I'm playing no matter what, and then come out and perform well for 4 quarters, have his biggest play, in fact, in the 57th or 58th minute of the game, I think it just tells you who he is, what he's capable of doing, and how in some of these big moments, he can put the team on his back. The offensive line deserves credit, like I said. Goff was very sharp. This team was put in position to succeed offensively, and they did. It was very cool to see St. Brown be willing to play. I didn't know what to expect early in the game. And in fact, the first 2 times he got the ball thrown to him, I thought, he doesn't look like he's maybe even got a 4th gear. But he did what great players do, and that's make it work, find a way to have an impact. This was a fun game to watch on Thursday night, even more fun to watch the All-22 and End Zone Angle film of. I hope I was able to produce something that you guys enjoyed as well. If you did, please feel free to let me know in the comments section. Likes and comments really, drive the engagement of these types of videos. And then finally, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study look at Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit's 44-30 win over the Cowboys in Week 14, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.